Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar that we have a very special guest who's going to be talking about a very interesting topic that's going to impact a lot of us, particularly in the fall semester, as we make the transition back into the physical classrooms and returning back to our offices, and our students are returning back from the virtual classrooms and going into the campus environment. So this topic is about the reintegration into the physical classroom and looking at the challenges that are going to be faced by the campus community, including students, faculty, and staff members. So I'm joined, as I mentioned, by a very good friend of mine, Jennifer Murchison, who's the assistant director at the University of Memphis within the Disability Resources for Students department. Jennifer and I have spoken about this topic over the past few months, and what's very interesting is some of the tactics and mitigation strategies that Jennifer's deploying, her and her team, to actually address some of these challenges that they're anticipating, that the challenges that not only their staff and faculty would face, but the students. So very intrigued to understand a little bit more. I'm sure you guys will all love this. We will be taking questions live during this webinar. However, there is a chat box that you will see on the Zoom toolbar. You can use this to type out your questions. I'm joined by my colleague, Abby, so she can address those questions on the chat box. And some of those questions we will, like I said, take live during the webinar and towards the end, time permitting. You'll also notice on the Zoom toolbar that there's closed captioning option to be enabled. So if you need closed captioning, make sure that's enabled and turned on, and you can access that right away. So without further ado, just to go over what we're going to be talking about, again, Jen is going to be talking about the challenges faced by students and the entire campus community about the transition into the physical classroom. And we're very grateful that she'll also be discussing the tactics and mitigation strategies too. For those who've not seen PresentPal before, you will also get an opportunity to look at the app. Now, PresentPal is a presentation and communication tool for students to help them reduce some of the anxiety and stress that they feel about public speaking. Now, this is relevant because as part of this transition back into the physical classroom happens, you will probably notice that a lot of students who have faced say social anxiety or had issues about public speaking or presentations, this may have it highlighted even more now as they return back into the classroom environment. So how could the tool help? So it's a great opportunity for you to see how the tool helps, but also helps them to improve their confidence in public speaking. So before I pass it over to Jen, we just have a quick poll that we're going to run. And this is more to just understand what are some of the challenges that you are anticipating that your students or faculty members may have as you transition back into the physical classroom. So I'll let the poll run just for a few seconds. Brilliant, thank you. So as we can see, the majority of people are actually concerned, or they're looking at anticipating concerns from not just staff members, but faculty around anxiety, but also addressing safety concerns. There's also issues around the safety protocols that may be in play too. So this is probably a very good transition into passing over to Jen now, where she will discuss some of these topics that you've just suggested on the poll. So Jen's, like I said, going to be talking about the shifting back from the virtual classroom, the management, classroom management aspects, the challenges around spoken response or presentations, and how they at University of Memphis are looking to help their students out. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Jen now, so you can hear her portion of the presentation and also listen into the app demonstration afterwards too. Any questions, as I said before, feel free to type them into the chat box there, where Abby, my colleague, can address them right away. Thank you. Over to you, Jen.
And as classes shift away from remote and virtual classrooms, students are going to have to learn how to be in a physical classroom again. Because they have been on video conferencing tools such as Zoom and Skype, they may have been with cameras off, microphones muted, and may have to be more aware of how they're engaging in a classroom environment, which could include making sure they're not interrupting others, making sure they're not talking over speakers and other instructors, presenters. And then note taking is going to be a bit different for this population as they come back to that physical space. These could be skills that they've lost because they've had to tweak what they're doing in the virtual classroom. Additionally, moving about the space physically is going to be different for a lot of students. They're not in a personal or home space anymore. They're more accustomed to the freedom of their home space, and they're going to have to adjust to not having that. As we get back into the fall semester, a lot of schools are going to be minimizing the physical distancing. So they could be going back into a classroom as it was populated pre-COVID. As students are adjusting to this, they could also have to rethink how they're spending their time. It's one thing for me to get up in the morning, get ready, get in the car, navigate traffic, find a parking spot, get to the office, as opposed to get up and move to a different room, turn on a computer. You know, those are going to be things that are going to be huge adjustments for a lot of folks, myself included. Next slide. Some of the challenges that students and those of us in the professional world had before COVID have not suddenly disappeared or manifested. Those can include challenges with presentations, with spoken responses, with verbal interactions in a classroom. And a lot of those challenges include a lack of self-confidence that could be because of a communication diagnosis, such as stuttering or mutism. It could be because of heightened anxiety, such as with the generalized anxiety disorder or social anxiety disorder. And it could be learning to manage audience expectations. Those are just some of the issues that students and the rest of us are facing whenever we go back into a physical classroom environment. But those have never really gone away. Those have always been present. And I think it's important for us to remember that in addition to a lot of these COVID-related issues, students are still dealing with these. Professionals are still dealing with these kinds of challenges. Next slide. Some of those specific areas could include issues like auditory processing disorders and other learning disabilities. Sometimes there could be problems with understanding what's being said in those physical classroom environments or how it's been worded. It's been helpful for a lot of students in video conferencing to have the captions like we have on today's presentation, because having that written word there to kind of double up with what's being said can be helpful in processing information. As I mentioned before, note-taking can still be a challenge, particularly if the person thinks that the instructor isn't clear enough with their explanations. And again, this is a skill that students have had to adjust a lot since they haven't been in a traditional classroom space. I think that's just one more reason why captioning is so important, because it is a multi-purpose kind of tool when it comes to processing information, focusing, and then just getting the information. Next slide, please. For other folks, socialized and generalized anxiety symptoms can be a big challenge. Certainly something that needs to be addressed as they move back into that physical space. A lot of folks can be self-conscious about public engagement and class interactions, particularly when they're giving speeches, presentations. Challenges with the Socratic method of teaching have always been the bane of my existence as a person with an anxiety disorder. And even presenting questions about lessons from readings and homeworks can be a daunting experience for folks with anxiety because they don't want to sound ill-informed or ill-prepared. Off-the-cuff interactions are not always possible for some folks with anxiety disorders. Being put on the spot can keep students from engaging in class discussions. I know one accommodation that I have sometimes worked with faculty and students on is giving the student the option to volunteer when they're comfortable doing that rather than being called upon. That's one example of something that we have done to assist in the classroom. Off-the-cuff interactions can also include getting thoughts and words jumbled up and can be quite challenging. Again, to put myself into the context here, in preparation for today's webinar, I was walking around my house talking out loud a lot, because I wanted to make sure that my thoughts were coming through clear, that I was getting some of that jumbledness out of my mouth, out of my words. So that's something that folks with anxiety disorders do have to be mindful of for themselves. Sometimes selective mutism can manifest in classroom situations. Students can shut down when they're nervous or anxious, and having some guidance, some prep, someone to help with getting prepared can be quite helpful for those students as well. Next slide. So how can we help the student? Well, as I mentioned previously, preparation. A lot of preparation goes into engagement. It goes into being prepared for class discussions when it comes to getting ready to give presentations or speeches. We are fortunate at the University of Memphis to be able to offer an academic coaching program, which is a weekly meeting that our students engage in with a graduate assistant or a staff member, 15 to 30 minutes. And during those meetings, we can talk about what's going on in the classroom. We can talk about how they're engaging on campus, but we can also talk with them and help them prepare for class discussions, for presentations, for meetings with instructors. We can help them brainstorm ideas on papers or projects. And we can also help them create a script of things to say when they meet with their instructor. If they can get good notes on a topic, perhaps provided by the instructor, that's the dream, right? Sometimes our students can use that in their weekly meetings to kind of organize and structure their study methods, their study materials. For a lot of our students with social anxiety during those weekly meetings, we can help them by writing down examples of what might be asked and what the answers could be. That can help with some of that off-the-cuff stuff that can be a bit tricky for students. We can help them anticipate areas of conversation from readings, keep those handy during lectures, perhaps in bullet point form. This is where a product like PresentPal can be quite helpful for a student in helping them with class engagement and interactions. We can also help them anticipate questions to be asked to the class, as well as follow-up questions in case someone else has a question similar to one that they came up with. And that can really help facilitate more class engagement, more interaction with their peers. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Amer so that he can talk to you about how PresentPal can help with more of these skills as well.
Thank you, Jen. And that's absolutely brilliant. I'm pretty sure we'll have quite a lot of questions with regards to this. So folks, type in any questions you have. We have some time to take some questions right now on the chat box. Abby, if you could look at those questions and let us know. I did have one thing that I wanted to ask of you, Jen. I know you guys have started to plan out the strategy and everything with the students coming in for the fall semester. You and I have had this discussion before that the students that were freshmen for last year had a very different experience from, say, freshmen that would be joining in this year. Those students that were freshmen last year are now going to be sophomores this year, but it'll be their first experience back into a physical classroom. So almost technically freshmen again. That group of students, what are some of the challenges that you're thinking that they might have with regards to the adjustment? Because obviously getting accustomed to the physical classroom, and with all the anxiety with the pandemic still there, it's not gone away, is still in the air. So what are you guys doing with regards to that?
Well, a lot of different things. We are fans of meeting students where they are, whether that is emotionally or where they are in their education levels. So we always start with what is it that the student wants? What kind of experience do they want? Because not every student wants the same experience. For those who have a concern about being in a classroom with folks who aren't masked and aren't vaccinated, we're talking through some of those issues and figuring out with our administration how to create a safe space, a safe environment for our students. For those who are a bit nervous about starting college a year into their college career, again, we want to ask them what it is that they want to do. If they want to just go to class, do their homework, reintegrate that way, then we certainly want to support that. But we also have a lot of students who want to engage socially, and we want to help them do that responsibly.
Yeah, no, and interestingly, I was speaking to a good friend of both of ours, Reed, from University of Arkansas the other day, and he was talking about the challenges that they had with regards to the enrollment numbers dropping last year for fall and spring, and the impact that had to, for example, budgets within disability sectors and university-wide. What do you think is happening now with the physical classrooms? I mean, his suspicion is that the numbers will go up again, or do you think that's going to take some time, or it'll be gradually going up?
Yeah, I think it's going to fluctuate a little bit as folks get their bearings and determine their comfort levels with being around large groups of people again. I think it did dip for a little bit because I think there were a lot of folks who were uncertain how it was going to work, or they already knew themselves that being in an online or online adjacent environment was not going to work for them. And as we're getting back into in-person classes, I think we're going to see some populations going up again. We in disability services are just, we're always kind of taking the pulse of what's going on and figuring out how we can offer the best experience for our students as possible, making sure it's as accessible as it can be. And I think it's been a learning curve for a lot of folks, particularly administration, whenever it came to shifting everything online. One area that I think needs to be addressed that I think was probably assumed was the level of computer literacy that a lot of students have coming in. I mean, we have, traditional age students who have always had access to computers, but we also have a lot of non-traditional students who have never had to use a computer. And I think that's been a big shift, a big change for a lot of folks, maybe making them aware of something they weren't aware of before.
Yeah, that sounds good. There's a question that's come in from Rose Payne. Rose, feel free to unmute yourself, by the way. It'd be brilliant to hear from you with regards to this too. The question is, reintegration is a concern of students, staff, and faculty alike. I am working on some training programs during the summer and into fall. Can this information be used? And do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think these are great areas to start discussions with others, just to make them aware of some things that, again, they may not be aware of. They may not have had to think about it. I know whenever I've talked with students who have taken a year off from school, I have a conversation with them about what it's like to reintegrate back into a classroom setting. Well, that's someone who may have taken a year off because they needed to work on a personal job, family care, self-care, whatever it is. But even being out of a traditional classroom for a year can be a big change for someone. When you're talking about shifting to a year and a half away from a traditional classroom where you're used to being on a computer, that can be a shift. Even when I'm talking to people, I'm looking for the little camera on my computer. I tell folks, I feel like I'm talking to Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey, because I'm always looking at the camera. I'm no longer looking people in the eye. And so that's going to be an adjustment too for a lot of folks. I think that's important to keep in mind. A little bit of patience, a little bit of grace is never a bad thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I see. I had there was a question. Is it?
Hi, Rose.
Hi. This is from Abby. Abby had chimed in. My concern was because staff and faculty, we've all been kind of out of that loop for a year and a half, and so I think we have to prepare ourselves as faculty and staff before we're going to be able to help the students. So this is why I thought like having like some pre-class training for faculty and staff. Just having a conversation, we have found, is a good thing, because there are fears across the board. And so if we come back to campus, and most of us are already reintegrating back to campus, but if we come back and we start full-fledged in the fall and we haven't discussed our own anxieties and our own fears and concerns, it's going to be difficult to convey a sense of confidence and, you know, not that sense of anxiety to our students. So that's why I'm thinking to have some, you know, maybe, you know, some brief trainings just to give everyone an opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely. One of the best things that happened during the pandemic was talking to my boss about how inadequate I felt, because I felt like I had all this downtime because I wasn't in a space in the office where I was being interrupted with phone calls and people dropping in and somebody popping in for a quick question. Suddenly I was at home and nobody was doing that. And I felt like, oh gosh, I'm just not doing near as much work as I was. And the output was the same. You know, it might have gone up a little bit. But also kind of validating some of those experiences for my students, talking with a student who was expressing her frustration about how much she did not like this. She did not like being on a computer for class, and she did not like being away from her classmates. She did not like this remote environment. And I said, yeah, I'm right there with you. It's quite frustrating for us too, for faculty who can't engage with the students, who feel like they can't create that bond that you get in a physical classroom, or those who weren't used to an online environment and couldn't create a bond that way. So I think validating that is quite important. And I think you're right, Rose. I think it's important for us to create those spaces so that people can talk freely about that. And as we know, when you talk about some of the challenges you're facing, it makes it less isolating. And it makes it easier. It makes it easier to bear, and it makes it easier to figure out a way to get through it with someone else.
Absolutely. And I think too, summer is a little less stressful. We have, you know, less students on campus, and it affords most of us some more time to actually get involved and have these times where we can create these spaces. But, you know, we also have a lot of faculty who aren't on campus during the summer. You know, they travel and do other things. But I just think it's something that if we don't address it before we're back in front of the classrooms, because what do we do with all that anxiety if we haven't even considered it in going back? How do we answer the questions for those students who are coming back? Parents is another area that we have to look at. So those are just some thoughts that, you know, in our area, we are working on doing some little mini trainings and creating like some resource guides to help staff and faculty as well as students to kind of navigate our return to campus.
Excellent. Thank you. Which institution are you at, Rose?
I'm at the University of West Georgia.
Okay. We're practically cousins.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. Really appreciate that, and thanks for the input in there and your experiences, sharing that with us. So that's if anyone else wants to volunteer any experiences too, we're going to take some questions at the end. I'll just swiftly move along to just mindful of the time, so make sure that everyone gets to see everything they wanted to see on this. With that said, we are going to launch a poll. Oh, by the way, credit for all these gifts and so forth go to a colleague of mine called Ben. He's brilliant at creating these little gifts. That always gives me a little chuckle. But Abby, I'll let you launch the poll. So please indulge us and go ahead, give us your best answers. Abby, I'm not able to see the screen, so if you could share the results with me too, and vocally, and let me know when the poll's done.
Of course, I'll give it like 30 seconds so to give everyone a chance. Oh, the numbers are moving quickly. I always find this so interesting, seeing the numbers now. I'll give it another 10 seconds and then
And if you could read out the question, Abby, what the question is on the poll, for any of our audience members who are not able to read it for any technical reasons.
Of course. So the poll question was, what are some of the barriers that could prevent you from helping students? And it was a multiple choice question. The top answer was staff resources with 59%, followed by anticipating unknown demands with 54%. Student resistance came in at 41%, followed by budget at 35%. So some interesting answers, but it seems that we're quite in agreement.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I actually thought budget was going to be a bit higher. Listening to some of the impact that on budget that the lower enrollment numbers has had on institutions, but yeah, I think all those answers make sense, and I think you are allowed to select multiple options on there. So I think people have been doing that. Jen, I don't know if you want to comment on that, what you just saw on some of the results there.
Yeah, I think that budget concerns are going to be a little bit different because when it comes to access, we have to find the money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's always going to be a concern whenever it comes to getting products that can help our students, traveling for our own educational purposes, being able to attend even remote trainings that would be helpful. So yeah, budget is always going to be a big concern. But if you're a one-person office, if you don't have somebody else there helping you,
yeah,
that's going to be a daunting task. So it doesn't surprise me that staff resourcing was number one.
Yeah, I think that's been a historic issue with disability services. For those who work in disability service, will probably understand what I'm talking about here. We're under-resourced and overworked, but we love our sector and we love working in it. My colleagues, Abby's also put on, if there are any other barriers that you guys can think of, feel free to share that with all of us on the chat box. It'd be brilliant to understand that. Obviously there's more barriers than we can list in the options there. So feel free to suggest any things that you guys are coming across that's unique to yourselves. Perfect. Okay, this is now your chance to get a first glimpse into PresentPal, what the tool does. As I mentioned before, it's a presentation tool that helps students reduce their stress and anxiety around presentations and improve their confidence in delivering presentations. Now, presentations in any environment, so this could not just be the standard formal presentations that for example, this one here, where I'm doing it via webinar or at a conference. It could be a presentation I'm doing to my peers in a group discussion. Could be a chat that I'm having with my colleagues, but I'm presenting something internally. So it's all those forms, and what the current climate has done. And I think, Jen, you've alluded to it, and Rose actually indicated also that there will be some anxiety and concerns, and particularly heightened anxiety around the environment, but maybe it's also had an impact to students' confidence around communications. So this is a tool that, if you've not seen it before, can possibly help you and your students with that. So background story, how did it get started? This is the interesting part. What was the reason for us developing this? So it starts off with the gentleman you're seeing on the screen now. This is Chris Hughes. He's the founder of the company. And Chris was facing a problem at university. And the problem was he was asked to give presentations 2 or 3 times a week as part of his coursework. Now, since the age of 13, Chris was diagnosed with dyslexia. So presentations always gave him anxiety anyway. But his go-to was, I'm going to use the old-fashioned flashcards and use them to help me out in the presentations, see if that works. As you can imagine, it didn't. He couldn't read his handwriting very clearly. It actually caused more stress and anxiety for him. So he approached the disability support services and said, okay, I need help with this. What can you do? And they said, okay, you got one of 2 options. You could either skip the presentation altogether, or you could have more time towards it. So the first option, as all of those who fight inclusivity and equity, we know is no good, because this is a lifelong skill set that Chris would have missed out, and he was not happy missing that out, because he wanted to go into business school. And this was an important skill set that he wanted to have. So not happy with that first option. Second option, what he found out was, as the time increased, the anxiety increased. So it's almost like that deadline approaching and someone extends it. Okay, you got another week. Guess what? That week comes up very quick and then you've got more pressure built up. So this led Chris to a journey to say, okay, look, surely I can't be the only one who's facing this problem. There must be others. And he explored it in the fashion that there must be problems around working memory. There must be problems there around anxiety. There must be other issues, linear focus and so forth. So he gathered all this data and actually found out that this is not just for someone with a registered disability. Almost everyone to some extent feels presentation anxiety. And different people for different reasons. Some people, it may be for the memory aspects, or other people's, it may be the visual stress of seeing people in an audience, and that may stress you out. It could be your peers, your managers, and so forth. And in the current climate we're in, believe it or not, having webcams turned off and everyone muted has its own anxiety and stress, because I may not know that my material is getting through. Is the connection all right? Are people enjoying the material? That has its own stress and anxiety. So this led Chris and the team to go down the path to develop our tool, which is an app you download onto a smartphone. So it works on Android and iOS devices and tablets. And what it allows you to do is create digital flashcards that do a lot more than just what traditional flashcards would do. And I'm going to give you a brief glimpse into what that looks like. Let's look at a flashcard. So here's an example of a flashcard that was created. And what the student's able to do is then put down bullet points or keywords that they would want to remember for each different topic or slide that they're presenting on. So if I've got, for example, 8 slides, I'll create 8 flashcards on the app. And I can write down my keywords. Always recommend, we try to recommend that don't try to type in your full script here, because this is more as an aid for you to remember what you're talking about and in what order. So that way you're not too busy trying to read out a whole script. So that way you're improving your own natural flow, your own confidence in speaking. The other key thing here that's important is this is fully accessible. So it's displayed in any font you want. So for example, if you have dyslexia, it had open dyslexic font. All the fonts available can be displayed in any size, font size, or any color contrast. So particularly for our VI users, because this works with screen readers too, this is really good. We've also enhanced, the development teams really worked on the accessibility aspects, and has built-in text-to-speech. So if you want to turn on audio cues and have your bullet points read back to you, it can do that too. So all these factors really make the flashcards more accessible and more approachable for a lot of those students that need that help. Okay, the other cool thing here is, and I'm going to show it to you right now, is we added a thing called safety nets. All right. And it is exactly as it sounds. It's something that's there for you if you need additional information to help you. Now that could be a picture, for example. So if I wanted to put an image of an equation or a diagram, I could do so. I can also put on my safety net some data, maybe something that I may forget, and in case I do, it's in my safety net. So this is something that remains hidden. My safety nets are there for me if I ever need them. So to give you an example, some students may actually use a safety net to calm themselves down, to control their breathing. So they may put a picture up of their pet, for example, just to calm their anxiety levels down, to control the breathing again and find their flow in their presentation. So safety nets are brilliant. I personally use it for the working memory aspect because it allows me, particularly with new content, if I'm delivering percentages or metrics that is new data, then at least I can, if I forget, it's in my safety net and it's there for me. Okay, moving onwards. Okay, so we talked about the things around the problems around anxiety, stress. So that's one of the problems that we have for our presentations for a lot of students. The other thing we wanted to do was, well, let's improve their confidence in presentations. So how do we do that? And the feature we've developed for that is the rehearsal mode. When you turn on rehearsal mode, what it does is it records your audio. So this is, as Jen was talking about, you know, when she said, I was walking around talking out loudly, practicing my presentation. This is that moment. This is you practicing your presentation, but you're doing it using your flashcards and it's recording your audio. The cool thing what it's doing is when you go back to listen to it, you can grade yourself and self-assess yourself on every element. So you can say my content was great, my timing was brilliant. I could maybe possibly improve on my speech part on flashcard 1. Flashcard 2, brilliant. And it will just give you a charted grade of your progress. The idea being it's that scaffolding approach towards improving your confidence internally and making you self-sufficient in delivering your presentations. We talk about self-advocacy a lot in our industry. And this is a great tool to really allow the student or the user to improve their confidence. I know some of you have probably spoken to me before about this and said, well, actually, I could use it on a presentation tomorrow. Go ahead, get in touch with me, and we will get you an access to a license for everyone who's attended. So just get in touch with us and we will get you a license so that you guys can use this for yourself, because I know a lot of you do presentations yourselves. Okay. So, and by the way, this is a brief glimpse into the tool, so I'm time sensitive, so I just didn't want to go full in depth. We are able to do live demos for you guys too, but this is just a quick glimpse. The other thing we've done is a final added feature, which is brilliant, is a lot of times we're doing presentations via PowerPoint, for example. We've created an integration that allows you to change the slides using the app. So you don't have to worry about pressing a clicker or the keyboard. So if I go to flashcard 2, it'll automatically change it to slide number 2. So absolutely brilliant. Because of the integration, I can actually add my notes on PowerPoint too, rather than just the app. The two things will now speak to each other. And just to let everyone know, Google Slides is coming. We are in the final stages of finishing the development work on that. The dev team's done brilliant work on this. We gave them an aspirational deadline and said, we would love to have it ready by the fall semester. And we've been reassured it will be ready for a lot of you guys who are going on our pilots, that you will have Google Slides added on to. So I wanted to talk briefly about a pilot that Jen and her colleagues did with us. So we ran a pilot program with University of Memphis, with PresentPal and their students. And the data they came back was fascinating. So one thing we will do is, by the way, everyone who's attended, we will get you a copy of that case study. So you will have received that. So just look out on your inbox tomorrow or the next couple of days, and you should receive that. And it's a brilliant case study because it shows exactly what I was talking about what students wanted to improve, reducing the anxiety and improving confidence. And it showed that over 66% of them said that this has improved their confidence with presentations. And majority of them really felt like it allowed them to organize and improve their executive functioning even more too. So the case study will go into more detail on this, so definitely recommend that. But the pilot program was great. I know, Jen, for you guys to do that. And one thing we've done is now for the fall semester, we are selecting 50 institutions to receive a free pilot for a full semester from us. Now, Jen has, because they've been very supportive, they are one of the institutions we've extended their pilot up and basically extended for the full fall semester. So everyone who's attended here, definitely do get in touch. This is a great way for you to test drive this, to test it on your students, see if it works for a group of students or all your students. But you will get the full training and support from us. We'll give you 25 licenses for your students. The only thing we ask is that we try to make sure that you get fully trained up on the pilot no later than 2 weeks before your fall semester begins. That's just so that you have enough time to implement this out. As part of the training, you will be officially then receive a certification from us that you're level 1 certified on PresentPal to train on PresentPal. So anyone who participates in that will get that certification too. Cool. So Abby's just going to launch a poll right now. This is allowing me and my team to understand what you guys are interested in knowing about further from us. So the pilot option is in there. So if you do want the pilot, I strongly recommend just select on that and then we'll be in touch with you. There's also an option to select a live demo. This is in case you've come in here, but you want other colleagues to see this, then by all means, we can arrange a live demo for you and your colleagues on PresentPal so you can show it to them before saying, okay, look, I want to do a pilot. And if you want a free license, just for yourself, just there's an option for that too. You can select multiples, by the way. So I'll give it some time. Abby, just give me a heads up when it's launched and you're good to go.
Sorry, I was on mute. I've launched the poll, but I'll give it another 10, 15 seconds just so everyone can get their answers in.
So there was a question, by the way, more on the product side from Daniel. Danielle basically asked that whether the student could choose the language on the settings, the accessibility settings on, I'm assuming this is what you're talking about, the text to speech part. The app adopts the inherent accessibility settings of your smartphone device. So if you have it set up on that to read up different languages, then it will adopt those settings. So if that's already exists in there, it itself does not have the capability to change or choose the language. But if your phone has it, your smartphone has it, it will use those inherent settings. And as such, it also adopts and has built-in speech to text, which I forgot to mention. So rather than type out my bullet points, I can actually dictate my points in.
Perfect. That's me close the poll now, Amer.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for everyone who's participated in the poll. We will be in touch with you on that. This gives me the final time for me to say thank you to Jen, and we will be able to take some questions right now for anyone who has any questions. By all means, if you want to come up on the microphone, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can type out your questions on the chat box. So Lisa, you asked the question, can this program be used on an Android device? Yes, it can be used on all Android devices and iOS devices. So Jen, I had a question for you. Obviously, this is more with regards to the case study. And by the way, a million thanks for being so supportive with regards to this webinar. You brilliant content, and I think it's relevant for all of us who are in the industry that we're working in. And as we return to, and I hate using the term quote unquote normal, I don't believe there is that such thing, but we're returning to a different phase. It's a different part of our journey now. And we're all learning from each other. And the great thing with webinars like this is it allows all of us to share ideas and concepts that we're all trying out. We're entering uncharted territories in a lot of ways. There have not been disability service departments or accessibility service departments that have had these challenges that you are all facing now. These are all unique. Your students, what they're facing now are all unique. So we're all learning on the job. Everything is theoretical right now. So pivoting and testing out new methods and sharing it is absolutely brilliant. So strongly recommend that. And I thank all of you for joining in. It's been absolutely brilliant having you guys. That's what makes it special. We will be doing another series of these, so keep looking out for that. I will be speaking at a HEAD conference also with a friend of mine who's one of the AT specialists at USC. So if you're going to a HEAD virtually, look out for me there, and I'll be speaking there. So any questions at all, please do pass it on. I've put down my contact details, and Jen, your contact details are there too, so people can, I'm assuming, can approach you directly if they want to discuss anything in detail with you about tactics or the case study even.
Absolutely. Yeah. jmurchis@memphis.edu is my email address. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. If you're new to the profession, I'm happy to be a point of contact if you have questions. As I said, I've been in the field for 20 years. There's a lot of information that can be shared, and the best way to share it is for somebody to ask.
And if you're in the Memphis area, you will not find a better host. You will know everything you need to know about the music history in Memphis, which is absolutely impressive. Yeah, definitely, definitely a highlight. So if you're there, definitely give Jen a shout. Take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen.
Quick-
Had
No,
to mention
please.
that.
Are you kidding me? I love an excuse to take people for the good barbecue and the good fried chicken.
That was the best fried chicken I've ever had. I will own up to that.
I'll give a plug
Excellent.
for Gus's fried chicken nationwide.
We're not sponsored by them. Just to let everyone know.
Yes, I've had Gus's fried. I've been to Memphis and I had Gus's fried chicken. It is the best.
Oh, is this Lisa?
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah,
Lisa.
I've been to Memphis a couple of times with the Beale Street.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have friends that play on Beale Street. I'm actually headed there tonight.
Oh, wow.
Everyone's
Y'all
saying they're
come on out
hungry,
and
so we
join
should
me.
probably
Okay.
this is probably lunchtime around the Pacific time zone area, so we probably should be careful that like everyone's getting hungry. But anyway, folks, I'm just over the time here, so want to thank Jen, my colleague Abby, everyone involved with this webinar and setting it up, and more importantly, for all of you guys who attended and invested your time with us. Thank you very much for that, and hopefully we'll speak to you in the near future. Any questions you have, reach out to me at any point, or Jen. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.